Hi, I'm Pav.
And I'm Neil.
And welcome to the Top 10 of Anything podcast.
Let's start the countdown.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
There are some actors that are good at comedy, some good at drama, and some good at action. There are some that are just movie stars. Kevin Costner is arguably one of those. From heartthrob to Oscar winner, Costner has starred in some of the biggest movies of the last 5 decades. Here are 10 KC facts. Okay, Kevin Michael Costner was born on January the 18th, 1955 in Linwood, California, and grew up in Compton, California.
Give me the lumber.
During his struggling days in Hollywood, he gave bus tours to stars' homes in Los Angeles.
Run, dummy!
Turned down a role in Platoon in 1986 because he thought it portrayed American soldiers in Vietnam negatively and didn't want to insult his brother, who was a Vietnam veteran.
You are my son.
Spoke at the funeral of his Bodyguard co-star Whitney Houston on the February the 18th, 2012.
Tatanka. Buffalo.
His favourite genre is Western.
I mean, all I did was kiss a girl.
Owns a 165-acre ranch outside Aspen, Colorado.
Here ended the lesson.
His role in Bull Durham was originally written for Kurt Russell.
You got nothing I need.
His frontal nude scene in For the Love of the Game was reportedly deleted after being met with laughter at test screenings. I know how he feels about that.
I have just created something totally illogical.
His first wife, Cindy Costner, played Snow White for Disneyland.
I am home!
And he turned down a role of Bill in Kill Bill Volume 1 and Volume 2 to direct Open Range in 2003 instead.
Back and to the left.
Thank you very much, Kevin, for all your wonderful clips there. Ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Costner movies. I've been looking forward to this one, the moment that we managed to sort this one out. And I'm so happy that we've got a Kevin Costner aficionado with us. Ladies and gentlemen, from the Movies in Focus podcast, will you please welcome Niall? Hello, Niall.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
Like I said, when I sort of got in touch with you and we said we'll do Kevin Costner movies straight away. For some reason, I've got an affinity with this guy. I will explain it with some of the movies because there are very deep family connections with Costner. Where's the connection? Where's the love with you?
Strange enough, deep family connections with Costner. Sort of growing up, my father sort of took us to. I grew up in Derry in Northern Ireland. And I remember, I think we went to the Foyle Film Festival, where they were showing Field of Dreams. So that was sort of my first kind of Costner film, and I must have been 9 at the time. So possibly on the touch on the young side, but I just remember sort of the power of it, and then obviously the Untouchable. So sort of as I grew up, I kind of got more and more into Costner, and sort of he became one of my favorite filmmakers as a director and as an actor. So I've had kind of loved his films kind of for 30 years now almost. And luckily enough, about 10 years ago, I ended up doing a set visit to Jack Ryan's Shadow Recruit, where I actually got to meet him, which was a phenomenal experience. You know, people talk about people being charismatic. He was incredibly charismatic. You know, he was funny. He was commanding. So he was everything you would expect Costner to be. And he's also incredibly tall. He's a big, big man.
Oh, really?
Doesn't really come across on screen.
No, not at all.
He's massive, you know, and sort of in every kind of way. So my sort of appreciation and love of Costner sort of continued from I was about 9 years old till sort of today.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's very... I mean, I didn't look to see how tall he was, but he never came across as somebody that was like a... I mean, he's got, what, you're saying he's 6 foot plus, is he? Or
Yeah, I'm 5'9", so I'm admittedly not the tallest, but he must be 6'1", 6'2",
wow.
And he's also very broad. He's a big, broad guy, so which, again, doesn't really kind of show on the screen.
Yeah. No, I said before we hit record that I was listening to your latest episode of Movies in Focus, where you're talking to the writers of Robin Hood. I was going to say Men in Tights then, but that's completely wrong. Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. And I recommend, I'll put the link to the podcast in the show notes, but I recommend anybody that is a fan of that particular movie, have a listen to the episode, because like I said to you, the one thing that was wrong with that episode, it was just not long enough.
Yeah.
And you managed to get some nice little sort of, I don't know, they were exclusives about the proposed sequel and things like that. But
I'd never heard that before. So I mean, there was coming at me, and I was like, and I've read about the film obviously, and I was like, and I've Googled it, and no one seems to have even asked them that question, or over the past 30 years. So it was a shock to me as well.
Yeah. So how did that interview come about?
I got an email. It was re-released by Arrow Film just before Christmas, I think. And so the PR guys kind of went, "Would you be interested in interviewing these guys?" And I was like, well, "Of course I am," And sort of I think it was literally about 3 days before Christmas, kind of recorded it. And but yeah, just great hearing about kind of how they came up with the idea and the development, and like you said, the sequel that never happened, which sounded fantastic. It's kind of like, I could have lived not knowing that the sequel could have been as good as that sounds,
Yeah. I mean, we will get onto that movie. I'm pretty sure, but it's like a few of Kevin Costner movies. They do get lambasted a little bit, I think, very unfairly, for certain reasons. But like I say, we will get to that. But we're going to try and do our top 10. Kevin Costner. I'm sure there'll be duplicates. I'm pretty sure there will be. But I'm fascinated to know what you've got as your number 10, Niall.
Right. Possibly a controversial choice, but I have chosen for number 10, 3,000 Miles to Graceland.
Okay.
Because I remember when that was first announced, obviously I'm a big Costner fan, but also a big Kurt Russell fan.
Yeah.
And kind of Elvis as well. And the concept of a bunch of guys dressing up as Elvis robbing a casino in Vegas, I think, is a great concept. And is the film, I mean, and I judged all my kind of top 10 on kind of how much I enjoy them, not necessarily they're the greatest film. So
yeah,
like this one, would you say it's possibly one of the best films in Costner's filmography? No, but for me personally, I enjoy watching it. I enjoy sort of the zaniness of it, the performances. I think he's great playing a villain, which is something he rarely does. Kurt Russell's very good in it. And I mean, I remember this, I think it came out 2001.
It was 2001, yeah.
Yeah, and it must have been around this time of year. I think it was like February. It was released in America. And it was involved, I don't know if you know the shenanigans with Franchise Pictures, the production company behind it. They kind of had all these legal issues. And it took a while for it to actually open here. And I think it just went straight to DVD. And I mean, this is sort of 20 odd years ago. I emailed the producer of the film.
Did you?
Because it was taken. So this is basically sort of the internet was his early days going, where is this movie? And he was like, oh, there's issues with it, and then it eventually sort of snuck out. I ended up getting an American DVD before it sort of came here. So I enjoy the kind of post-Tarantino-ness of it. In fact, I tweeted something about it a couple of weeks ago, and the guy who actually cut the trailer for the movie, he ended up involved in the conversation because Costner and Kurt Russell had competing cuts of the film.
Oh, really?
They both had the kind of went right, I want the movie more action, I want more comedy, or whatever it was. And this guy had apparently seen both cuts of the films in its early stages. And that's where the trailer kind of came from. So he kind of got caught up in the sort of Twitter feed. And so it's kind of one of those films that the story around is probably more kind of entertaining to some people in the film. But I really enjoy the film. In fact, once I, again, emailed the director to see if he'd sort of want to talk about it, and I never heard a response. So if he ever listens to this and he decides he wants to talk about it, I'm available. Yeah. But, it's a flawed film. I think it's, you can see why people don't like it. You'd have to be in a very sort of the right mood, I think, to watch it, because it's comedic, but it's also very brutal at times. So that's kind of what I decided to slip into number 10 on my list.
Yeah,
and it's probably no one else's Costner list.
No, to be fair, we've got on the honourable mentions, a couple of people have mentioned it on their on their honourable mentions. So it's definitely one out there that fans enjoy. I mean, star-studded: Courtney Cox, Christian Slater, Kevin Pollak, David Arquette, John Lovitz, Thomas Hayden Church, Ice-T. I mean, it's it's full of stars. But yeah, it was. I think I've only ever watched it once, but I can remember enjoying watching it.
Yeah.
I think it was just after I think when Costner hit that sweet spot with a run of movies that I don't think many people have ever managed to equal in hit after hit after hit. And I think this was one that was just like you say, not many people. I'm obviously now with the production issues or the distribution issues that you're talking about, it sort of makes it a little more to understand. But I really enjoyed this movie. It was in my honourable mentions as well. It was probably 12, 13 if I did it in top 20, but great way to start. Okay, my number 10 is Open Range. Now, before I was just compiling with my top 10 the video playlist we put for our Patreon supporters. So I just watched all the trailers to all my top 10. And God, it just made me realise just how great some of Kevin Costner's movies are. And especially something like Open Range. There's nothing really groundbreaking or new about the story. It's himself. Another great cast as well. Annette
It's
Bening.
on my list as well. So
it's on your top 10, is it?
it is, yes.
What number is it on yours?
It is number 5.
Wow. Okay. Obviously directed by Costner as well.
Yeah.
Michael Gambon, Robert Duvall, and it's a good. If you love westerns, you're going to love that movie because it ticks every box. You got this guy who's not saying he doesn't love killing, but obviously in his past he's done that kind of thing, and he's got a great shootout at the end. It's just everything you want in a movie and in a western as well. And I think Kevin Costner does that so well. And I mean, anything with Robert Duvall in it, especially old Robert Duvall.
Yeah,
he's
you
just
get
great.
An extra star for Robert Duvall being in any film.
Absolutely. So why is it so high in your list?
I think Costner as a director is great. I mean, obviously, I remember seeing him at the Oscars. It must be 20 years ago, and he came out and he said, the show's running long. I like it when things run long.
Yes.
He likes to take his time, and I love that in a movie. I think so many movies can be kind of cut down or feel truncated, and you feel you're not getting a full vision. And so I think it plays so beautifully. And again, much like you said, he's kind of a violent man, but there's a beauty to kind of the first kind of 2/3 of the film, as sort of things develop. But it's just the pace of it. I mean, it begins and it's almost poetic, and it's just the guys out kind of on the prairies and doing the job, which you normally get just a snippet of in a cowboy film, but they kind of take their time and you kind of, know the experience and you kind of feel what they're going through. And then, I mean, that final shootout is one of the greats, people don't talk about Costner being able to direct action, as such, but I mean, that's a brutal gunfight. And the film's not particularly violent up until that point, and then it just sort of goes for it. And it really gives you that cowboy shootout that you want. It's kind of, it doesn't hold back, and you come away satisfied that the movie is good, but it ended on a really good high with that sort of climactic sequence.
Yeah, I also think I equate it a little bit to Unforgiven, the Clint Eastwood movie, in the fact that because I think you go into the movie knowing that you like Kevin Costner, so you give that character, and the same with Unforgiven, I think you like Clint Eastwood, so you don't care what he did in his past. He may have been a really bad person in his past, but because you love Kevin Costner or you love Clint Eastwood, you give that character leeway. And in the end, with the Open Range, all you want is for him to find happiness.
Yeah.
And you kind of know that there's a sliver of a chance that he's not going to get the happiness that he wants. You want him just to start a life with Annette Bening and everything is wonderful, but that maybe he might not make it at the end. Spoilers, I'm not going to say spoilers. Well, if you watch it, you watch it. But there's always that worry that, he's not going to get the happy ever after that he maybe doesn't deserve. Morally, he maybe doesn't deserve with whatever he's done in his past. But yeah, I think it's a great movie. That's good that it's up higher. Yeah, there's just other ones that are obviously higher than mine. Okay, your number 9 then, please, Niall.
Number 9 is The Bodyguard.
Okay.
I kind of hemmed and I mean, when I sort of signed up to do this, I thought, oh, that'll be easy. And then I sort of started to try and rank Costner's top 10 movies, and I realized it was much harder than I kind of thought it would be.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of kind of shuffling around, and I kind of thought, yes, it's a big glossy Hollywood movie, but it works. I think it works in that. I mean, obviously, I don't know if you know, but the script was originally written for kind of Steve McQueen and Diana Ross to do in the 70s, and at that point you had the 90s or the late 80s equivalent of Steve McQueen and Diana Ross. I mean, even Costner's got the Steve McQueen haircut.
Really, yeah, absolutely.
In the movie, and it's a bit melodramatic. It's a bit schmaltzy, but it delivers. If that's what you want. In it's kind of peak Hollywood, old-fashioned Hollywood that you don't get anymore, and you almost didn't even get back in sort of 1992. I think it came out. It's a love story. It's a bit of a thriller. It's kind of based around kind of Hollywood and entertainment. So it kind of ties all these things together. And Costner's great, kind of being the badass, and Whitney Houston is great in it as well. And again, there's a lot of interesting supporting characters kind of coming in and out of it. So I kind of thought, if you're going for kind of that sort of movie within Costner's kind of range, I thought, yeah, that sort of, I feel I had to kind of put that in at number 9.
It didn't make my top 10, I have to say. It was one of those ones that it definitely started on my first list, and as I compiled my top 10, it kept dropping down. I think, like you say, I thought Whitney Houston was fantastic in it. I don't think anybody really expected her to be that good.
No.
I was just looking. I completely forgot that Gary Kemp was in it.
Yes.
He played a complete asshole in it, didn't he? He was like the asshole, like, what was he, a producer or the agent or something?
I think he's the record or manager or something.
He was a complete dick when he was a real schmaltzy like guy. But Kevin Costner in this one was like, he's the guy that you just want. He was the bodyguard, somebody that's going to protect you. So, and there wasn't really much acting, was it? It was very stony faced, just like a bodyguard should be. But yeah, it's a great movie, great soundtrack as well. But it didn't make my top 10. My number 9, going into the sports movies, which is one thing that Kevin Costner is a genius at, and it's Tin Cup.
Yes.
So I don't know, because again, there's something about the movie that is like it's just a formulaic movie. It's an underdog story, but there's so much charm in that movie. And Kevin Costner has never been more sort of like James Stewart, that kind of. Do you know what I mean? The Cary Grant kind of. He starts off a bit schlubby. He's a schlubby loser. Just play a driving range pro, and gets a chance, almost like a Rocky style chance, to play in the Open. Is it the Open or the Masters? Yes, the Open, the US Open, isn't it? I think
It's the Open, yeah.
Yeah, and then balls it up right at the end, but wins the love and wins the respect and stuff. And I just love this movie. And I've said this before on other podcasts we've done. The way Kevin Costner eats a sausage is just there's something about that man eating a sausage. I don't know what it is. But it's very, very cool. It's very, very funny in places. Rene Russo's fantastic. Don Johnson is really, really good.
Yeah, he's brilliant. He's like the flip side to Costner. He's kind of Costner with an edge. I mean, he was actually, I think, originally in the running to play Elliot Ness in The Untouchables.
Oh, really?
And I think the De Palma didn't cast him because it was almost too close to Miami Vice, the same kind of character, and he wanted somebody sort of slightly different. But they're kind of two sides of the same coin. Yeah. Costner and Johnson in that,
Yes.
And they even look. I mean, they could play brothers in a film. They've got a similar look. So I mean, and Cheech Marin's in there as well.
That's right.
As the sidekick.
Yeah.
He's brilliant. So yeah, it's another great movie. Didn't make my top 10, and again, it was so difficult. You kind of had to kill your darlings on this one, and sort of go, oh.
Absolutely. The one bit in it is when, I can't remember exactly. I'm paraphrasing, but it summed up, like you said, the two characters. Whereas Roy McAvoy, I think, was Kevin Costner's character, would always go for it, even if it meant that he would take 13 on the last hole and ruin his chances of winning the Open. Whereas Don Johnson said, pars, I'll take 18 of them. So he's quite happy to have par, and not go for it, play it safe every time. And like you say, they're the antithesis of each other, but they're the two sides of the same coin, if you like you said. Okay, then, Niall, you're number 8 then, please.
Number 8 is No Way Out.
Okay. I can't believe you've gone 3 so far, and I haven't got any of them in my top 10.
I mean, it's a lot of films, and they kind of, they're all very different, different kind of, tones and moods. But No Way Out, I think, is just a great thriller.
It is.
And, again,
this would have been my number 11. I'll give you that. This would have been my number 11 without a doubt.
It's a little bit dated now. I think I think the music, the score is a bit sort of synthy. I remember from the last time I watched it, I mean, the cast is great. I mean, Gene Hackman, Sean Young, Will Patton, who I think is always a great kind of supporting character. And Costner's kind of, I mean, you can see why he became a sex symbol kind of off the back of sort of, those random movies, because again, he's a naval officer, he's in the white kind of naval uniform. And so you've got that. So and again, it's a thriller. It's romantic. I mean, and the sort of countdown at the end, I think it's a remake of a film called The Ticking Clock, from what I remember. And really is, there's sort of a ticking clock countdown to the end. And I won't give it away, but there's a tiny twist at the end of the tale as well, which doesn't quite work when you watch it over again. But the mechanics of how it's all put together,
yes,
I think it's just a really well-made thriller, and all the elements sort of slot in nicely. And it's directed by Roger Donaldson, who I think is a really, really kind of underappreciated director, who's sort of done a couple of Costner films. But I think Gene Hackman's great, sort of playing the villain of the piece. Like I said, Will Patton, he's got a really kind of interesting part that feeds into Costner's character and the Gene Hackman role, which sort of works, which is a really good dynamic that you kind of don't see coming. So I think it's as a thriller and as an 80s thriller, it's probably one of the best, I think, thrillers of the 1980s, like, just because all the elements work so well. And he's kind of, I mean, that was released the same year, I think, as The Untouchables. Kind of, so you can imagine any actor, those two movies coming out in the same year. That's a pretty. It's just kind of two sides doing sort of the kind of the stoic guy, but also kind of the romantic lead as well, which he doesn't sort of. So that kind of made my kind of number 8 spot.
Yeah, it's like you say about it being. I think maybe it's out of time a little bit, because how long it takes for that photo at the end to download. Yes. You think. You watch it. I mean, I haven't watched that movie for a long, long time, but I loved it at the time that it came out. And it's like, I thought about it when you said that, and I thought, my God, I mean, if you were waiting around for a photo to download that long now, you'd be on at your internet provider, wouldn't you? Because that is ridiculous. It was literally like one line every 5 minutes, and the whole countdown was seeing what was on this photo. Yeah. But the weird thing was, I mean, I don't think. We shouldn't spoil it in case we have some Kevin Costner fans that want to go back to his back catalogue. I'll leave it for you, everybody, to go and see the film, because it is a nail-biting film. It really is great. Gene Hackman, like Robert Duvall, he's going to give you an extra, as Mark Kermode called it, he's a 27%er. He always makes a movie 27% better just being in it. And I love Gene Hackman. I love pretty much everything I've ever seen Gene Hackman in. He's a fantastic. That's a top 10 we should do. Top 10 Gene Hackman films.
That wouldn't be easy though.
That wouldn't. We'll have you back for that one. No, we'll have you.
That would be
If we thought Kevin Costner one was hard, Gene Hackman one would be like nigh on impossible, I think. Okay, my number 8. We're back to westerns again, and it's Silverado.
Ooh. That didn't make my list, so
it didn't make your list. No. Okay, I mean just the cast in Silverado: Scott Glenn, Kevin Kline, Kevin Costner, a young Jeff Goldblum, Brian Dennehy, who's another one of those powerhouse of actors. He just looks like an absolute thug. John Cleese. Who else we got? Danny Glover, directed by Lawrence Kasdan. It is a great, and Kevin Costner. It's quite a young Kevin Costner in it, but he's the guy that is like the wisecracking young dude that loves, he loves the romance of being a cowboy and the guns, and he's a great gunslinger with 2 guns. It's loads of fun. It is a fantastic movie, and it is. I mean, like I say, John Cleese. Not putting an accent on. He's still just, for some reason, an Englishman. He was the sheriff of this
Yeah.
Western American town.
Playing it reasonably straight as well. I mean,
Reasonably, yeah.
you know, he could have gone full John Cleese, but he kind of reins it in, no pun intended.
I would love to have seen him be like complete like Basil Fawlty running down the street and doing like the silly walks and stuff. But yeah, I anybody that hasn't seen it, like I say, it's an early Costner movie, and he's not the star of it. It's an ensemble movie, but go and watch it because it is fantastic fun.
Yeah.
It is so much fun,
and he's so youthful and energetic in it, which he kind of never was again. I think maybe a bit in Wyatt Earp at the opening where he's sort of playing, like 15 or something, but you never really kind of see him with that boyish kind of energy and anything that he kind of did since then. So it was kind of a one-off, but I mean, it was a star-making turn for him.
I agree. I think sort of after that, it was more, he was concentrating more on romantic leads.
Yeah.
So he's not acting, sort of like a kid or, like an excited teenager or whatever. But thoroughly recommend it if anybody hasn't seen that one. Niall, your number 7 then, please.
Number 7, For Love of the Game.
Okay. I don't believe that's another one. I haven't got that one. Okay. And I haven't seen this one movie, so tell me all about it.
He's kind of an aging baseball player looking back over his career, and Kelly Preston plays an old girlfriend and is kind of looking back on his relationship with her, his relationship with the game, and kind of how he sacrificed his relationship with her for the game. It's directed by Sam Raimi. I think it came out 1999.
Well done, it was.
I saw it at the cinema. I think it came out kind of here, 2000 maybe. But it's a Sam Raimi film. It's sacrilege. It's probably my favorite Sam Raimi film. Because it's the most un-Sam Raimi-like Sam Raimi film you'll see. It's got a fantastic score by Basil Polidoris, kind of this really rousing score. I think the relationship between him and Kelly Preston is really well done. The relationship between him and his fellow baseball players, that's really well done. In fact, that the movie could do with more of that. In fact, I think one of the longer cuts of the movie, which is kind of what you alluded to in the opening, kind of your Costner facts. I think Costner wanted more relationship with his fellow ball players, kind of smattered throughout, which obviously would have made the film longer and it's a Costner style. But it's really well done. And one of the highlight, I think, for me is it shows you him kind of coming out to kind of pitch on the field. And you see him walk out, and everyone's sort of roaring and screaming, and all the fans. And he kind of, I think he says sort of something like, "Turn the mechanism," and the sound, he blocks the sound out, so it's just him and his opponent. So it's so well done in that sort of sequence. So it's a great performance by Costner. The movie looks beautiful. It's a big, must have been like a $50 million movie back then, just as a drama. Like I said, the score is great, the production design is glorious. And I think it's just a really heartfelt film. And again, it came out, I don't think it did particularly well in America. And obviously, baseball films don't really travel.
No.
So I'm amazed it actually got a cinematic release here in the UK. It probably played for one weekend, and I was lucky enough to kind of get there. But it's kind of Costner being in his most sort of leading man, kind of romantic drama sports movie. So I think if you love kind of your Bull Durhams or your Field of Dreams, it's definitely a movie. If you haven't seen, I highly recommend watching it because it's very unexpected and it's probably aged incredibly well simply because of times probably being kinder to it than the press were when it probably came out kind of 25 years ago.
Yeah, I'm going to have to watch it. Because I didn't realize it was a Sam Raimi movie. Yeah, I didn't realize that. So I think considering, well, Bull Durham and Field of Dreams are in my top 5 of Kevin Costner movies, I feel I should give this one a go. So you've sold me on that without a doubt. Okay, my number 7 might be a bit of a surprise that it's this low, but it's Dances with Wolves. Is it in your top 10?
It is, yes.
What? Okay, right. Okay. I've seen that look before on other episodes. I shall just talk about it for a little bit and then we'll move on, maybe. This was right in the sweet spot of like the full on love of Kevin Costner that I was devouring anything that was Kevin Costner. I think there was a directed DVD one called The Gun Runner. I don't know if you can remember that.
Yeah.
And this was like and I can remember like when I was buying anything that Kevin Costner was in, and I saw it was in, I don't know where it was, Woolworths for £5, and I thought, oh, I'll have that. Never watched it, but I thought it was good because I was a completist. I wanted all of Kevin Costner movies on DVD. This one was obviously the one he won Oscars for. He directed. I always equate this one with Braveheart for some reason, because it was like Mel Gibson won Oscars for Braveheart and Dances with Wolves, and it's an epic in every true sense of the term. Beautifully acted, beautifully shot, a great story. There isn't really anything else more you can say about it. It's a masterpiece. It's every frame, especially out in on the what would you call it, out on the frontier, if you want. Yeah. It's just beautiful, absolutely beautiful, and Kevin Costner never been better in that. And how the same as Mel Gibson, how they take on the pressure of directing a movie as well as starring in it, and also knocking it completely out of the park, to use another baseball term, is spellbinding, absolutely amazing. So
I don't think he would have had Braveheart, and I don't think Mel Gibson might not have had the balls to actually make Braveheart if Costner hadn't have gone off and made Dances with Wolves.
I think you're absolutely right. Okay, should we move on to number 6, Niall?
Yes. Probably another controversial choice. The Postman.
Wow. Okay. Right, now we hang on. We did say these are the top 10 Kevin Costner movies, not the top 10 worst Kevin Costner movies. Just
the Postman gets a bad rap, and it's unfair. I think I will admit there's possibly 15 seconds at the very end of the film that let it down.
And how long's the movie?
Probably like 3 days long.
Yeah, I think it is, yeah.
But there's the kind of a shot where it's kind of him, I think, grabbing a letter off like a young boy, and then they kind of cut to 10 years later, 20 years later, and there's a statue of the very same kind of thing, and it's a dedication to the Postman. So apart from that, I think it's got everything that Dances with Wolves has. Is it as successful as that? I don't mean financial, I just mean as a film. No, but it's kind of got it's a Western, kind of futuristic Western. Again, it's got a great supporting cast. Will Patton again.
Will Patton, yeah.
You know, and Joe Santos from the Rockford Files, who played Becker, the cop. He plays kind of his right-hand man who's lost his tongue. So it's a post-apocalyptic world where Costner sort of finds a postman's outfit and a bag of mail, and then decides to kind of hand out the post as a way of ingratiating himself into kind of settlements. And then as things go on, he kind of takes up the mantle himself and ends up kind of becoming a leader of these people. And again, yes, there's a bit of schmaltz in it, but I think it's epic. I think it's a Western. I think it came after Wyatt Earp kind of had tanked at the box office. I had a few movies, and obviously it was a pricey movie. And I think that at that point the press decided to really give him a kicking, and I think he got away with it with Waterworld because it made its money back. And I think this was a time where they just thought, do you know what, we're going to say it's bad, but all the elements are there that are in Dances with Wolves. It's romantic, it's kind of epic. Again, plenty of horses, and it reminds me a bit sometimes of the Charlton Heston movie called Will Penny. There's kind of elements of that sort of woven into it. So I think people kind of go, oh, The Postman, and it's a long film, but that's the really only criticism you can really kind of say. Could it have been better? 2 hours, 15 minutes, possibly. But I think it's great. He's great, and it just came out at a time where the press wanted to kind of have a go at him. Where they tried it with Dances with Wolves. They tried it with probably The Bodyguard when Whitney Houston was cast, and I think they just thought, right, this is the time. We'll see if the mud sticks this time when we have a go at him. And I think that the movie's so much better than I think anyone remembers, or the people who haven't seen it. will probably, I think they'll be pleasantly surprised.
I think it was famous as well for like cleaning up at the Razzies as well, wasn't it? It was one of those movies that, and that always leaves a bit of a stink on a movie, even though then, I mean, they're meaningless, the Razzies, aren't they? But I think, yeah, I mean, look, I will totally admit I've probably watched half an hour of the movie. I probably haven't watched all of it, so I haven't given it a chance. And
Give it a go.
I think, yeah, maybe I should.
And there's also Tom Petty pops up in it as well in a sort of a cameo.
Oh, really?
So that he's got a little part sort of in it, and yeah, there's elements of, like I said, Dance with Wolves, Waterworld, obviously being post-apocalyptic. So there's good stuff in there. Yes, it's long, but these days you can pause it and come back after you've had a cup of tea and a sandwich, whatever you want.
Okay, that's another one to add to the list. Okay, my number 6, JFK. For me, I'm a massive JFK conspiracy fan. Okay, so I don't read many books. My co-host Neil will tell you. I normally only read books if they got pictures in them. I don't tend to read books as a rule. But the amount of books that I devoured or have devoured over the years in regards to everything to do with the JFK assassination. And the trouble is with this movie, I mean, I think it's a great movie. I really do. I think Oliver Stone is a great director. The trouble is because it's Kevin Costner, you think, well, I like Kevin Costner, so I'm going to side with this version of events. When you actually delve into it, you realize that Oliver Stone, maybe some of it is he's playing with the truth a little bit. Some of it is he's playing fast and loose with some of the facts, or melding 2 or 3 characters into one character, which I think is a little bit of a cop-out. But as a thriller of a movie, it's fantastic. Don't ever use it as a historical document, but as a thriller of a movie, and Kevin Costner, again, has never been any better, I think, in this movie.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. In fact, it's my number 2.
Oh, okay, number 2.
So, and I don't know if you've seen the director's cut of JFK.
I think so. Yeah, I think I had that on Blu-ray. I think, yeah.
Which is, I mean, it's just more. It's kind of, and again, it historically there's a lot of sort of playing with the truth, but yes, it makes a fantastic film. I mean, just the energy in it. I mean, it's a long film as well, but it just goes at a clip. You just the performance and the cast.
Yeah.
You kind of look at the cast. You've even got going back to Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau. And,
I know. It's fantastic. Yeah. Ed Asner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joe Pesci, who's brilliant in it. There's that scene where he's sort of he's spilling the beans and there's toupee.
That's right.
Tommy
Lee Jones, Gary Oldman. Yeah. Kevin Bacon. Yeah.
So it's I think phenomenal, and the filmmaking techniques that Oliver Stone used 30 years ago, which still feel very kind of cutting edge now, and
yes.
And the John Williams score, that's great. Like you said, historically it's not 100% accurate, but what Oliver Stone has managed to do and just pull these threads and go, I'm taking all this stuff, I'm going to weave it in, so I'm telling you anyway.
Yes.
And it's probably, obviously, he's just trying to get everything at you, and it's like somebody telling a story like I'm talking now. You're going one way and you're backtracking, and the unreliable narrator sort of scenario, but he's just going, right, here's all this shit and I'm giving it to you, and it's coming from every angle. Donald Sutherland, there's another performance in it where there's that scene on the park bench.
That's right.
Which is phenomenal. So yeah, I think stunning. And again, not only is it my second favorite Costner movie, it's one of my favorite films of all time. So
right.
It's kind of right up there for me.
I think that because it's funny you say about taking those different threads. The way I was looking at it is that there are certain points in that movie that make perfect sense in regards to the whole conspiracy. And then there are certain bits in books that I've read that I think, yeah, that's a good point, but that doesn't make any sense. Oh, I mean, I don't know. Where do you stand on the whole JFK? Is it something, the assassination is something that interests you, or is it just the movie that interests you?
No, I mean, I kind of watched, I'm not as well schooled as you, but I've watched plenty of documentaries about it, and the concept. And again, I mean, I remember when this film came out, it was the 30th anniversary of the assassination, and the TV was just awash with
Yes,
documentaries,
that's
conspiracy
right.
theories,
Yeah.
And I remember sitting with my dad watching them, and kind of, and again, every so often a documentary will come on. I'll be right to watch that and kind of build on it. I don't think things went down the way that history says they did, because I mean, even if you watch JFK or you watch the documentaries or you kind of read articles, there was something that went on that didn't quite fit, and I think, yeah, it wasn't a lone gunman from a book depository in a corner with a bolt action rifle.
Yeah, I've always said that the whys and wherefores is something that I'm not 100% interested in. It's the mechanics of the actual day, the actual shooting, and just, I mean, we're not going to turn into an assassination podcast, but it's always the one thing that's always got me with it is if you are up in the 6th floor, I think it was, of the Texas School Book Depository, why you wouldn't shoot the president when the car is coming straight towards you, and then if they miss and they go off at a speed, you've still got another chance to shoot. Why wait until he turns around the corner and then have a go? It makes no sense. Triangulation of crossfire, as they say in the movie.
Yeah, and then the pristine bullet found, that
Exactly.
that doesn't quite work. And
Come on, Niall, let's reopen the case. Come on, me and you, we can crack it.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Come on. Okay, so that was my number 6. Your number 5 was Open Range, which we've already spoken about. So my number 5 is the wonderful Waterworld. This is one of those.
Make my top 10. It didn't.
It didn't make your top 10.
That was a toss up between that and The Bodyguard. So it was kind
right. I can totally see. Look, I think I couldn't understand. I couldn't understand at the time when the movie came out where all the hate came from, where all the vitriol came from. For me, it is just a fantastic, like, superhero, like, just romp of a movie. Yeah. Dennis Hopper is just chewing the scenery up in, like, or sort of Alan Rickman style as the baddie. I mean, there's certain little bits of special effects that don't look fantastic, but this is at the dawn of those kind of special effects. I watched the trailer and it reminded me, most of it is in camera. Most of it is stunts with real people on real sets doing the real stuff. And it's just I think it's a fantastic movie that is so much fun. And Kevin Costner as that sort of the man with no name kind of silent assassin that's going to go and just save the person that maybe he loves, but to save his friend from the evil that is around. I just love it, and I think it's a great film. I don't know what you think. I mean, obviously it's not in your top 10, but it was close to being there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could do top 20 Costner, and
easily. Yeah,
I think it's great. I think it's a very sort of swashbuckler. There's kind of the bit where the kid's being sort of kidnapped by Dennis Hopper, and she goes, "You don't know who he is," and she sort of, I think it's actually used in the trailer potentially, and it's, he's mean, he's tough, and sort of intercuts with him sort of boarding the ship.
That's right.
Dispatching all these guys, and I mean, that's just great filmmaking, that sort of building up who the character is. I think it's great. Like you said, it's all done practically. You've got all those jet skis and explosions, and yes, you've got that dodgy whale thing that, which. But apart from that, the effects look great. I mean, it's mid-90s.
Yeah.
So that was probably, outside of Jurassic Park, one of the first big CGI monsters that probably was used. Because I think that came out the year before the Dragonheart with Sean Connery voicing.
That's right. Yeah.
So they hadn't really done a lot with, especially in broad daylight. I think it's a great adventure. And again, it happened to make money, and there's obviously... the Heaven's Gate, everyone was calling that, Kevin's Gate.
That's right, yeah.
Roles, and then this was Fish Tar, and, and they just wanted them, because Costner, I mean, his rise to success was so fast, and what he managed to achieve with, a run of movies that had JFK, The Bodyguard, all those things in it, so they were just looking for it, and Wyatt Earp had sort of underperformed kind of the year before, so... I think it's a great movie. It's pure entertainment. In fact, a couple of years ago, I sat down to watch Aquaman, and
Right.
I got 10 minutes into Aquaman, and I thought, you know what? I want to watch an aquatic action adventure movie. I'm going to stick on Waterworld. So I took and the effects. It's all done practically. Costner's character, like you said, the man with no name. He's a bit of a curmudgeon. You know, he's not sympathetic, which a lot of actors in a big summer blockbuster would have want. Let's make him more sympathetic.
Yeah.
Let's give him more lines, more one-liners.
Yeah.
Costner doesn't do it. It's sort of very egoless, even to the fact that at that point, sort of his receding hairline, he's wet, and he obviously just doesn't give a shit. He just wants to make the movie, depending on whatever. And there were rumors of him getting additional gills CGI'd out again because test audiences thought it was a bit icky or whatever it was. But I think it's a great. I think for a summer blockbuster, I think it holds up well.
Mm.
And again, I feel like I'm some sort of salesman for RO DVD and film, but they released a fantastic package a couple of years ago, which I think has got 3 different cuts of it. So there's the theatrical cut, there's a special edition, and then I think one called the Ulysses cut, which is sort of a bunch of other stuff amalgamated.
Oh, right.
Sort of cut back in. So there's quite a lot of. So if you can get your hands on that, I highly recommend it to anyone listening. So it's definitely worth a watch. And again,
because anybody that's not a Kevin Costner fan, you mention Waterworld to them, and the first thing they will go, "Oh, that's a little shite." I said, "Have you ever seen it?" No. I said, "You gotta just watch it because it's just 90s fun. It's just so much fun, and the fact that everything looks real as well is the thing that I think that sets movies from like today apart. Now, anything that you can imagine, you can do in a movie now if you've got the budget, basically.
Yeah.
Back in those days, I mean, that was one of the highest budgeted movies, I think, of its time, wasn't it?
It was the first film to be given the green light. And no, in fact, it wasn't. Universal Pictures didn't want to give the film the green light at a budget of $100 million.
Right.
Or 120, I think it was going to be the budget, because that they didn't want to be the studio that got the rap for doing it. So they under budgeted the film, knowing that it was going to go over budget.
Yeah.
Then when it went over budget, the press kind of went, "This movie's a disaster." And it's like, well, they knew it was going to cost it, but they didn't want the bad press of going, "We're sinking 120 million into what this film is going to be."
Yeah. And what would 120 million get you these days? I mean,
it would get you The Rock 3 times.
Yeah.
That's probably what you'd get.
Yeah, I heard today on a podcast that the Indiana Jones movie is budgeted at $300 million.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how much of that is going into Harrison Ford's pocket, but I mean, or the majority of it is going on the de-aging of Harrison Ford. There's probably 150 million of it because they got to do a lot of it, I suppose. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, but again, why do you have to do it? Just write a contemporary story. Don't set it in 1945 when he was 45. Just
yeah.
It's unnecessary. It's just a gimmick.
I hope it's good though. I do, because after the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which was good in places.
Yeah.
But I kind of, they keep saying this is it. This is the last Harrison Ford one, and it won't get recast. And you just hope, just please let him go out with a bit of dignity and just a good swashbuckling movie.
But there seems to be a lot of CGI in the trailers.
There does seem to be. That's what worries me. Yeah.
There's that whole New York chase sequence on the horse, which just, and I think I tweeted something about it when the first trailer dropped, and somebody went, "It's actually the compression of YouTube makes it look even more fake."
Right.
It still looks a bit too much of everything. It's kind of too bright, too this, too that. So
yeah. Filmed in Glasgow, that was, I think. That scene. Yeah, crazy. Anyway, let's hope it's good. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. So that was my number 5. So now we're on to your number 4 then, please.
Number 4, Field of Dreams.
That's my number 2.
And again, I originally had it at 3, and I kind of moved it around a bit. I think, it's brilliant. And like I said, I saw it when I was about 9 years old, and it was stunning. And the older you get, as you watch it, it becomes even more emotional.
Mm.
You know, and I mean, it's just flawless. You know, the soundtrack's great. The Costner's great in it, playing the everyman. You know, the James Earl Jones, the concept. You know, the whole thing about kind of hearing the voice, going out on a whim and doing something. Yeah, it's brilliant. I mean, it's flawless, and yeah.
Yeah, well, it was in when we did our Christmas special with Helen O'Hara from Empire magazine, and we did our top 10 greatest movies of all time. That Field of Dreams was in my top 10, which doesn't make any sense. That this is my number 2 Kevin Costner movie.
No,
I will explain
no,
why
yeah.
it's not my number 1 when we get to number 1. But I have spoken about this movie. It was in my greatest sports movies of all time. I think it might have been number 1 in my greatest sports movies of all time. But it's got everything. And apart from the fact that you got Kevin Costner's hair, which looks amazing, is just fantastic. You can't not cry at the end. I think just the end with Dad Want to Have a Catch is just one of those lines that just, if you don't have a lump in your throat, then check your pulse, because I think you might not be living. It's just like you said, it's a perfect movie, and I think it's one of those movies that if it had been made 40, 50 years before, James Stewart would have been, Jimmy Stewart would have been the star of it. And it's just, I've spoken about it so many times on this podcast. I'm not going to bore anyone again because I keep saying the same things, but it is just a perfect movie.
I mean, Burt Lancaster,
Absolutely.
Which I think it was his final role.
I think it was, yeah.
And he's brilliant in it. I mean, that whole sequence with him, kind of, I mean, it's all kind of magical and magical realism, or magicalism, how you want to look at it. But it's, and even the end, and I mean, that film could have been so bad if it hadn't been made by, people who understood the material. I've actually got the book behind me somewhere, because in the book there.
Yeah, I got the book somewhere.
The original book.
Shoeless Joe.
He's Salinger. Yeah, the James Earl Jones character, he's J.D. Salinger, and Salinger went, "I'll let you away with it in the book, but I'll sue if you call him Salinger in the movie."
Right.
So yeah, it's just brilliant, and the casting of it, the whole thing, and the way it plays out, it doesn't outstage welcome. You kind of think it, it becomes a bit of a road movie. It becomes a family drama. It's, you've got the kind of the shitty brother-in-law who wants to sort of take the land.
He's the baddie, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, you've got all these elements which could have been very soap opera or very kind of one note, and they just all work to kind of make a film which is magical, and sort of works on every single level.
Yeah, and it's also one of those things, if someone hasn't seen it and they say, well, tell me what it's about. And you say, well, it's about this farmer that digs up his field and a load of dead baseball players come out. People go, well, that sounds like shit. Why am I going to watch that? It's crap.
Yeah.
Same as trying to explain someone Swiss Army Man. You say, well, Harry Potter's a farting corpse. Oh, well, I don't want to watch that. So, it's all in, just watch it. It's a fantastic, magical movie. So that's your number 4. My number 4, back to the baseball movies, it's Bull Durham.
Didn't make the cut for me. I thought two baseball movies. I kind of thought, oh. So no, I kind of had a...
I think it's another one of those, it's sort of an ensemble movie, but Kevin Costner is I don't know how old he was at the time, but he's the washed up veteran that gets traded down to the minor leagues to look after, I've forgotten his name. Tim Robbins, that's right. Yeah, Susan Sarandon looks just absolutely gorgeous in it, and it is funny. It's a bit bittersweet, but Kevin Costner just looks cool. I mean, I've never seen anyone wear like a shiny green jacket and look as cool as that.
Because they were never even cool when he wore them. So
yes,
they were naff in the 80s. So
absolutely. But yeah, and again, I've spoken so many times about this film on previous podcasts. I'll keep it short. I haven't seen it for a while, and I need to watch it again because it's one of those movies. I think it's timeless. It doesn't. Yeah. I think it was an 80s movie. I think it was one of his 80s.
88,
movies. I think something like that.
Yeah, so I think it came out the year before Field of Dreams.
Field of Dreams, yeah. But yeah, watch it. You don't have to be a baseball fan to enjoy the movie. It's a movie about love, and it's a movie about finding your place in the world, and maybe aging out of a certain part of your life and moving into another part of your life. I think it's a fantastic film. So
Yeah, but it's like all of Costner's sports films. I don't like baseball. I don't like golf. I don't like, I don't know how to play them, So, but I can enjoy all those movies,
yeah,
because yes, that's part of it, but that's not what the film's about. It's
no,
just, that's just the world in which it's set. It's like saying you've got to understand, or like stockbroking to enjoy Wall Street.
yes, exactly.
It's kind of the world is, and again, another film he did, which Draft Day, which is about the kind of the American football draft. That actually is sort of about football, but again,
All
it's
right.
sort of more,
Yeah, I've never seen that. It's one of the ones I've
yeah.
never seen, I must admit. Okay, so that was my number 4. So Niall, your number 3 then, please.
3 is The Untouchables.
That's my number 3.
There we go.
There you
We
go.
finally matched up at some point.
Well, yeah, I thought we would. I mean, I didn't think it would take us to number 3, but there you go. Far away then. Why number 3?
Oh, it's brilliant. I mean, you forget how good it is until you watch it again, and you go, "This is just brilliant from start to finish." You've got the Ennio Morricone score, which is one of his best, I think. Just the production design again, the tailoring, which I think is done by Giorgio Armani. Kind of Costner being at his most kind of upstanding and kind of moralistic. Sean Connery, who's absolutely brilliant, playing the Irish cop with a Scottish accent. De Niro, sort of chewing the scenery. Andy Garcia, Billy Drago as the sidekick henchman who's just so slimy. Charlie Martin Smith as a little accounting guy. So that the cast is brilliant. It's a fantastic ensemble. And again, Costner kind of plays it very kind of subtly and lets everyone else have their moments. And I think that's one of the things why Costner is actually such a good actor. There seems to be not a lot of ego. He cares more about the film than his sort of being the center of attention. And that, yes, he's Elliot Ness, but you could say Connery's the star of the movie. He literally walks away with the movie, Connery. But just everything about it, the sequences, you've got the Odessa step sequence in the train station, which is just phenomenally well done. That whole chase in the courthouse, kind of towards the end. The opening with a little kid in the bomb, in the briefcase, just all this, the bit where they go to raid the liquor and it turns out the big giant cocktail umbrella thing, just great scenes and the dialogue, is so good. And so, yeah, what is it about you that likes it?
It's a perfectly crafted movie. That's the thing for me. It's one of those movies, like you say, right from the very, very first scene. I think it's one of Brian De Palma's best, I have to say. It's hard to put my finger on one thing that makes it that kind of movie that I could just... It's one of those movies that if it's on TV or if I'm flicking through the movie channels and it's on, I will stop and watch it from wherever it is to the end. There are some funny moments in there as well, but it's vicious. I mean, Al Capone, Robert De Niro playing Al Capone in it. I think I don't know how much weight he put on, but he put on a hell of a lot of weight to play Al Capone. I think now, I can't remember if I read it right at the time. Didn't they get the tailor to make his silk underwear, and it was the same guy that did Al Capone's silk underwear? So he was being really method about it. But it's like I say, it's vicious, it's gory, it's got everything you want in a movie, a proper adult movie. Do you know what I mean? It's not a thing for kids to watch. It's just balls out. The action is fantastic. That, like I say, that one scene in the train station. I think if there's ever an educational piece on how to edit a scene, that is going to just ramp up the pressure, to use slow motion in certain parts of it, It's just a masterclass.
Yeah, I mean, and it's De Palma kind of using all his techniques that he kind of uses in sort of different, but he's got the budget, he's got the A-list budget, which I
Yeah.
think is probably till Mission Impossible, the biggest budget that he had. And you can just see De Palma go for it and go, I'm making a classy movie and I'm using all my little Hitchcock bits that I want to use, and I think, isn't it Carlito's Way? It ends with a chase in a train station as well, which is probably very similar to the end of The Untouchables.
Yeah.
I think he realized that he'd probably done peak De Palma, and kind of that stuff. But I mean, the editing in that, like you said, if you want to know how to build tension in the space of 3 minutes, watch that. And the cutting and the editing and the Navy guys coming in, the mother, the kid,
with
Costner.
the push chair and and then it finishes with such a great button with Andy Garcia holding onto the pushchair with his gun just like ice, and he's like, "You got him? Yeah, I got him. Take him." And it's just going, it's just this shocking sound of the gunshot, and that is fantastic. I think you're right as well. I think the one thing with Kevin Costner, he's very generous as an actor, because that is an ensemble movie, and you can imagine other actors that would be, well, no, I'm the star, so let's let everybody else be around me. But he's very generous in the fact that I don't even think he was first on the. I used to have the poster for it, and I'm sure it was Sean Connery, then Kevin Costner. Understandably, Sean Connery won the Oscar, didn't he? For
and that was sort of the start of kind of a comeback for Connery. He sort of had kind of wilderness years. And obviously, in the 80s, he did Outland in kind of 81 or whatever it was. And then he did he sort of segged back into leading man.
That's right.
Roles in kind of big budget movies, which he kind of shunned for a good part of sort of 15 years. And, But I mean, he's brilliant in it. He steals the movie,
I
and
completely agree.
Many great performances.
Completely agree. Okay, so that was both of our number threes. Your number two was JFK, which you've spoken about.
Yes.
My number two was Field of Dreams. So before we announce our number ones, Niall, do you want to give us your countdown from 10 to 2, and then I'll do the same?
Yes, we had number 10, 3,000 Miles to Graceland. Number 9, The Bodyguard. Number 8, No Way Out. Number 7, For the Love of the Game. Number 6, The Postman. Number 5, Open Range. Number 4, Field of Dreams. Number 3, The Untouchables. And number 2, JFK.
Wonderful. Mine was number 10, Open Range. Number 9, Tin Cup. 8, Silverado. 7, Dances with Wolves. 6, JFK. 5, Waterworld. 4, Bull Durham. 3, The Untouchables. And 2, Field of Dreams. So now, what is your number one Kevin Costner movie?
Dances with Wolves.
Yay! Okay.
I think it's just a masterpiece,
Is that it? Is that all you want to say?
No, I mean, cinematography, there's a very good, I actually, bizarrely, watched it just a couple of months ago again, the theatrical cut.
Oh, right.
But there's a longer kind of special edition, I think a good 45, 50 minutes longer. And again, it just plays beautifully. There's just more of everything. The John Barry score, which is stunning. The performances, you've got Costner, but Graham Greene is phenomenal as kind of the Native American. In fact, I interviewed him about a year ago and kind of ended up talking about Dances with Wolves, And I think he's a great actor anyway, but he's just brilliant now because he's the comic relief of the film. It could be a film that's very, very serious and very long and dry, but he kind of lights up the screen when he comes along. You've got, there's that fantastic buffalo hunt sequence. Again, great scenes. The opening, where he's injured and he goes out to kill himself, kind of holds his arms out, and he ends up sort of inspiring the men that he is with. And then he's given whatever post he wants, and he wants to go off and sort of out into the wilderness. And I think the voiceover narration works, which could have been kind of very annoying and cloying.
Yeah, they're very hit and miss, those kind of things, aren't they, when you have narrations like that?
But it works on that because I mean, you've got so many kind of long scenes and kind of poetic moments that voiceover is almost kind of Terrence Malick-y in kind of how it works. So yeah, it's just, I said, great. I mean, that was a film that kind of revitalized the Western, kind of was a dead genre. And then, I mean, like I said before, you probably wouldn't have got Braveheart if
No,
Costner hadn't made that, but you wouldn't have got Unforgiven. I
no.
don't think, the Warner Brothers would have given, because I mean, that was the biggest movie of the year. And 91, I think it did like 181 million in the US box office and like 400 and something globally, which today would be amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
30 years ago, you adjust that for whatever it is probably, $1 billion,
Mm.
for a film about a guy in a Western going out, sort of living with the Native Americans.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, it made westerns profitable again, didn't it?
Yeah.
That was the thing, and yeah, I've already said my piece about it, so I'm glad that you got that as your number one. Well done, Niall.
Yes.
Okay, my number one is Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Now, I have to full transparency on this. Field of Dreams was my number one. And my wife did ask me, and she said, "Oh, what's going to be your number one then?" And I said, "Oh, Field of Dreams." And she looked at me like she was ready to pack my bags. She said, "How can you choose that? Why isn't Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, your number one?" Let me explain. Okay, so when we started going out, that was the movie that we danced alone in the cinema to Bryan Adams at the end of the movie when everybody had left. We were having a smooch and a dance. Well, not a smooch. That makes it sound very sexual. It wasn't. We were just having a dance in an empty cinema. That movie has always been like our movie. The Bryan Adams song has always been our song. We had a cat called Azim. We named one of our daughters Jasmina, which was the name of the character that Azim was in prison for. If my first daughter had been a boy, she would have been called Costner. That was the name we were going to call him if it would have been a boy. So that's the reason that there's so much family in that. That my wife was absolutely right. That Robin Hood, I mean, it wasn't in my top 10 movies of all time, but Robin Hood for Kevin Costner, it should be my number one movie. Plus the fact that again, it's a romp. It's a great adventure movie. I haven't seen it for a while, but watching the trailer, like I said I did earlier on, I thought, my God, there's some just great moments, especially with Kevin Costner with the bow and arrow. When he splits the arrow, he's got that slow motion shot when he's got the flaming arrow. That's great. Alan Rickman is fantastic in it as just the camping it up, about as close to a carry-on villain as you're ever going to get in a movie. And like I've said before, listen to Niall's episode of the Movies in Focus podcast with the two writers, because there's some absolute nuggets of gold of information there that I didn't know about the sequel. We don't want to spoil anything. I want people to listen to your episode, but you look at it and you think it was a no-brainer to do a sequel to that movie because it was so successful. The number one, Bryan Adams number one for 16 weeks or something. Everyone got sick of it by the end. Everyone had to go at Kevin Costner for his accent, but I can forgive him for that.
I can live with the fact that he doesn't sound like Colin Firth or whatever it might be, but no, it didn't make my top 10. I mean, but again, it's probably one of my most, again, if it's on TV, I'll flick it on. It's like a perfect Sunday afternoon film.
Absolutely.
And I lived in Nottingham for 15 years or so.
Oh, did you?
So I'm kind of au fait with the legend and the location thing. So I kind of know quite a bit about it. So the historical, because there's it probably wasn't a Robin Hood, but I think it's a fantastic film. I think that I said that if you did have Dances with Wolves, you probably wouldn't have had Braveheart. I don't think you would have had Braveheart if you hadn't had Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Yeah.
Even if you look at the production design and the kind of the feel, it's very much Braveheart. They could be, there's a hell of a double bill there, a very long double bill, but you could probably kind of, and again, the humor and the characters, and I mean, even Braveheart, he's Robin Hood, he's got his merry men around him, Little John, Brendan Gleeson, you could probably break it down and come up with kind of everything that, is in Robin Hood, is in Braveheart, as a structure.
Yeah.
But no.
Yeah, and I'd also recommend try not to watch the cut version. Watch the full on. I
Yeah.
don't know whether they called it the director's cut. I'm not sure, but it was the full on cut. There are a certain couple of bits in the movie that are maybe not as PC now as they would have been back in the day, if you like, and they tend to get cut out. But yeah, my number one. I'm gonna have it as my number one. I know a
Yeah,
lot of
and
people.
another great score as well. Michael
A
Caine's
great,
score.
a fantastic. Yeah, I had the soundtrack to it. It's a great soundtrack. Okay, before we have a little bit more of a chat, honourable mentions. At death_or_gory said JFK, A Perfect World, Dances with Wolves, Bull Durham, Field of Dreams, Untouchables, Open Range, Fandango, No Way Out, and Revenge. Revenge was another great one. Anthony
Yeah,
Quinn.
yeah. Tony Scott.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
he said, I think JFK is his best film, but after that, he's got a bunch of great ones that are hard to rank. He definitely has the filmography of a man who loves the movies. At Cap Tiny App, I think Captain Yap, maybe, sorry. Robin Hood, Untouchables, Open Range, Waterworld, JFK, 13 Days, The Postman, The Bodyguard, and 3,000 Miles to Graceland. There you go. Kit Torpin said, the biggest non-surprise in podcast history, Pav picks, drumroll, Field of Dreams. I totally concur. King of sports movies with at least 8, all excellent. Darren Brown said, my favourite is Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. If you ignore the American accent, it's a great film. At JBender451 said, Dances with Wolves. At Brendan O'Brien, 77, said JFK. Lisa Buchanan said No Way Out with Gene Hackman. Excellent film, but hard to go back and watch it once you know the twist. And The Untouchables with Sean Connery and Andy Garcia. Those 3 men and me in a room. Censored, she said. Okay. Kim Peniston said, I love The Bodyguard. Ross Carpenter also said, my favourite is favourite by default due to my only having seen Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. So thank you very much for that, Ross. So tell us a bit about your podcast, Niall.
Right. Well, the Movies in Focus podcast, I've been going a couple of years now, but Movies in Focus is a website where I've been reviewing and interviewing. It's been going 11 years this month, in fact.
Wow.
I set it up. So I've been sort of kicking around a bit, and before that, I kind of wrote a bit for Collider and Screen Rant. So kind of I thought Movies in Focus, just rather than all the superhero stuff or the stuff that, that I didn't really want to write about, I thought I could focus on old movies, new movies, Kevin Costner movies that may not have sort of people wanted because it wouldn't get the big hits, things like that. So yeah, the podcast is just me interviewing film directors, writers, producers, actors, kind of anyone, special guests, kind of an amalgamation just to kind of, and again, some of the stuff is current, like the things that have just been released. Some of it might be looking back on careers, that sort of thing. So it's just kind of my love of film, kind of over the last, throughout my life, and then kind of doing it kind of online for the past sort of 15 years or so.
Yeah.
There's, places where you can live, like, the Robin Hood one. It's kind of, I'm interested in finding these things out. So I hope that people that listen to them are interested as well. So it's kind of me just asking people questions and my curiosities about the filmmaking process, acting, directing, whatever it might be, kind of the stuff that really kind of intrigues me about the process.
Well, the website will be on our show notes, so please go and tick it and go and have a look and have a listen to the podcast. I'm going to delve into some more episodes over the next few days. So any ones that you would recommend?
I've got a really good one with Philip Noyce, the director who did Dead Cam, a couple of the Jack Ryan movies. So that's an interesting one. Graham Greene, who I said was in Dances with Wolves. Mick Garris, who does the Postmortem podcast, horror podcast. He's kind of film director. He's got a weekly podcast. I interviewed him just about his life and career. There's a biography coming out about a year or so ago. He's an incredibly interesting guy who's worked with Stephen King, Spielberg, kind of they call him the League of Horror. So he's worth listening to. So there's plenty of kind of good stuff and kind of people that I'm friendly with that have kind of gone through their favorite movies and that sort of thing. So there's a bit of something for everyone if you're interested in horror, drama, westerns, whatever it might be. So a good mix of odds and ends.
Excellent. Wonderful. Oh, that's me sorted for the next couple of days of some episodes then. Wonderful. Okay, before we say our goodbyes, you can find us on all our social media at top 10 pods. Please email us at toptenpods see, you can tell that I don't normally do this. Neil normally does this, you see. So I'm so out of tune on this. Email us at toptenpods@hotmail.com if you want to get in touch or send us suggestions for episodes. Come and join us on our Patreon and support the podcast at patreon.com/top10pods, where there are great rewards such as bonus episodes, video playlists, limited edition merch, and you can be a guest on your own episode. And also come and subscribe to us on YouTube, TikTok, and all podcast providers. Links are in the show notes. Why don't you? Niall, it's been lovely to meet you. Thank you so much for spending some time with us, and we'll meet again for the Gene Hackman top 10, shall we? Should we start trying to work that one out now, shall we, for Christmas, maybe?
It was a good year to figure it out. No, do you know, it's been an absolute blast. And like I said, when I came up with the top 10 Costners, I was like, that should be easy. And then it wasn't. So
it never is it?
No.
Yeah, it never is. But anyway, thanks so much for joining us, Niall. Neil, get yourself better so I don't have to keep reading all this crap out, for crying out loud. Get your knee better. And everybody else, thank you very much for watching and listening, and let's start the countdown.
10, 9,